Hello and welcome to a stacked edition of The Stack. From the world of travel, we welcome Iain Ainsworth from the Aficionados. We also speak to the executive editor of Condé Nast Traveler. We head to Indonesia to hear from Najwa Shihab, news anchor and founder of the Narasi News Network. And also we feature a very cool magazine about cats. Enjoy the show. From Midori House in London, this is The Stack, 30 minutes of print industry analysis, and I am Fernando Augusto Pacheco. We start the show talking with Iain Ainsworth, founder and editor of The Aficionados. Founded in 2009 by him and co-creator Marcus Burgermeister, it is a neat edited collection of beautiful hotels, houses, and villas. They also publish a beautiful print title. The new issue is a design special, from a reimagined vineyard hotel in Alentejo to beautiful alpine chalets. It is a wonderful read. Iain, always a Monocle favorite, stopped by a Midori House to talk about the new issue, travel, and more about the Aficionados.
The Aficionados, although it's a collection or curation of hotels, the Aficionados is actually for the people that like nice things in life. And I decided 15 years ago that, a bit like a delicatessen, I wanted to go somewhere and find unusual, rare products that were a little bit mixed. Everything has a story. So how do you knit these people together? How do you communicate with the people that like nice things, from interiors, architecture, design, to good food, wine, and also meeting genuine people from hospitality. So the Aficionados is, in fact, the people that follow us. And for them, then we have the website and we have the magazine. Today, we have 122 independently owned hotels, every one of them. The smallest is 2 rooms, which is up in Scotland. I happily can say every one is different. So it's a bit like a family. There's a sibling relationship and you think there's similarities. But in fact, in each one of them has perhaps a deliberate break in style. And that's purely because of the owner's imagination, dictated sometimes by the heritage of the building, budget, and then also their flair for interiors, of knowing where to put that chair, where to hang that oil painting that's perhaps an heirloom. So you get an heirloom mixed with something from the 50s Danish, mixed with a woolen cloth made in the village down the road. And that's what I knit together. And we hence call it the Aficionados. So it's everything that's, I think, is really nice. So it's like a little emporium of everything that's good.
And that flair is what makes the Aficionados special, in my opinion, because when you look at your magazine and your website, sure, the hotels are different, but there is a sense of curation there. Yeah. I can see immediately if a hotel, that wouldn't be on the Aficionados. Do you feel the same? Because they might have different aesthetics, but I don't know how to explain. You have to explain to me, actually. Yeah, what makes a hotel good to be on the Aficionados?
It's funny, actually, because one of our regular clients wrote to me that they've been to stay at probably 12 of our places in the last 12 months. So they're travelling around Europe. They said to me, it's like a quiet whisper over the dinner table. But I don't quite know how to describe all the experiences I've just had on travels, because no one of them is the same. But there is something. It could be maybe bonhomie, hospitality. It could be, I think, the attention to detail that threads them together. And you can see this when the owners walk through their places. They're moving things, the cushions, the paintings, the magazines, repositioning everything. So it's their heart, if you like, as a hotel or as a little guest house, an outpost of them and what they wanted to create. One thing is consistent, though, is that there is the real original items in the hotel. So there's no fakes, no copies. There's something that we safeguard against. They wouldn't do that anyway. But I think it's this narration of partnering with craftsmen as well that gives them the individuality. So everything is handmade where possible. I suppose that is a thread. If somebody said to me, what is the condition of being a member of the Aficionados? Rather than saying you have to have concierge or 5 stars or minibars, I'd rather say, there's an element that is crafted. There's an element that's naturally sustainable because you're from the village or the town. And there's a strong thread of design, whether that be present, past, or iconic or heirloom inherited from your grandmother. Sort of that worldly touch, I think. And the other thing I noticed as well, bookshelves. You go to many places and they have these ominous bookshelves filled with strange little objects and plants, but it's never really curated. So if you go into our hotels, you'll find that the books are there from the owners. They put them there because they've read them. They influence them at some point in their career. And equally, it'll be a collection of ceramics that they've been collecting for a long time. And I think that's also a point of difference that they have.
That's a good point. And actually, I've stayed in one of the hotels, Park Hotel Mondschein. They have precisely that as well that you were mentioning. And talking about Park Hotel Mondschein, you do have almost like a focus as well on that region of the world around South Tyrol. And was that on purpose, or did it happen organically? Because quite a lot of them, how many? I think you mentioned around 30 or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, everybody, when they start the business, they have a business plan.
Yes.
And South Tyrol was not on my business plan, to be honest. We did look at the Alps, but previously I was working for a company and we had some connections into the Alps, and they approached me. And I have to say, happily, we say no to a lot of new hotels in South Tyrol because we have so many. But what's wonderful again is again, you're going from somewhere like Ottoman-Good, which is a small, beautiful townhouse in the middle of Murano.
I had a few drinks there. Haven't stayed there.
Well, you know what it's like.
Lovely drinks.
Beautiful garden as well.
Yes.
And then you can go up to the mountains to, say, Miramonte, where you have panoramic views across the Dolomites. And I think the South Tyrol it was a hush destination before. Now, everyone's going there because you've got the mountains, you've got the ski, the nature, the food, the craft, the history, and great wines. So, yeah, we've knitted together quite a complex route. So anyone heading to South Tyrol should look up on the Aficionados.com because there's a fabulous collection and completely different from another.
Do you visit many of those places regularly? Are you kind of a big traveler?
Yeah, I have the dream job, I suppose. Myself and I have a team that go and visit the hotels, including Marcus in Munich, who's been with me since day one. So we tend to split them. He's more of an avid ski fan, so he likes to hit the Alps. He's actually in Zermatt at the moment at the rock festival that's going on there this weekend. But we do try and meet them, and especially the owners. Again, because I'm a people person, I need to know, are we going to work together? Do we love each other? Because if not...
Are they cool,
Yeah, I mean,
not
you
cool,
reach a certain
nice.
age and, I suppose, perspective on business. You either have integrity or you go for the mass. I have integrity, and therefore you need to meet the people, and they need to understand how we work. But importantly, I need to know who they are. 99% accidental hoteliers, so they stumbled into the industry, which makes them really interesting people to meet and talk to. But I think it's like everything, you need to make that connection. So ideally the person and the place. But I can tell usually by their logo, the way that they present themselves, or whether they write an email to us. You sort of get a feeling. People write to us, I just love what you do, full stop. You know that they're sort of on our wavelength. If they write to me and we have 22 keys and we open, I sort of get bored in the first paragraph. So I'm looking for those strong personalities, and then I like to connect the dots with them.
Do you get a lot of requests, I presume? So
Yes.
I think you have to say a few no's. Right?
Yeah, I mean, we're quite fortunate in a way. We don't really do development or acquisition. Again, it's that whisper over the dinner table. So it's around 20 to 25 applicants a month wanting to join us. And probably that will come down to about 5 that are interesting. It could be that we've got a conflict of interest. Again, I'm sort of old school. I like to have relationships. So then I would call you if you were a fellow hotelier and say, listen, there's one. It's only 20-minute drive away. It's completely different. What do you think? And if they say, well, no, I'd rather you didn't, then we don't. But again, I'm not really motivated by having thousands of hotels, because then for me, anybody that's a little bit decision fatigued, they're not going to use us as a resource. For us, it's the people come to us and say, you surprise me every time. And that's that hot list that they like about it. And that variance again of no services to 5-star. How can you bring them together? But I think it's pretty much like eating grilled fish in a harbour on a beer crate that's been turned over. And you sit there and eat the grilled fish from the boat to a Michelin star restaurant. I like both. And both are equally valuable. And that's what we try and bring into the Aficionados, this unseen world. People say, why do you not have a club? I said, we don't need a club. We are the Aficionados. That's it.
Is there any part of the world that you're interested perhaps to find more hotels there? There are a lot of hotels in Europe. I mean, I was so glad to, I was browsing in your website. There's a lovely place in Kufinici. I've been to the island.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And now I need to go to that place.
Yeah, it's...
and it's a sunny destination for those who think the Aficionados is all alpine. Not always.
Not always.
You have a lot of kind of nice destinations. You have one in New York as well.
Yeah, I mean, geographically, we have a saying, here, there, not everywhere. Again, I'm not really sitting there with a list. I have to have a place in London, for example. Again, if I find a place in London that's privately owned, it's got a sense of style, design, I like the people, then we'll work together. But otherwise, I'm not really in a hurry. I guess for me, the next step would be maybe into sort of Africa, because there's a lot of shared sensibilities there with the lodges and wildlife reserves. But equally, Asia is knocking on our door increasingly, as is Latin America. Not so much in North America, to be honest. I think that's because of the culture and heritage of operating hotels. It's a very different mindset over there. So I really am at the moment. We're sitting there. In fact, last week we were sitting there. Where do we go next in terms of what do we need? I still think in Europe there's so many undiscovered gems. And the good thing is people are returning back to villages and towns where they grew up. They want a different life. And that's what's fascinating for me. They go back and maybe the family had a farm and suddenly they turn it into a little guest house hotel. And then they're involved in the wine production. Then they're involved with the farmers. And they bring a worldliness to back home. So there's a sort of house of patrician. And I think that is amazing. And they also then bring the international clients with them. And you see this with Brooker 49 in Vals, which has become a landmark of a hotel, and it's only got 8 rooms. But Ruth has become a beacon of what it's like to do real hospitality.
That's fantastic. Well, Iain, let's talk about the magazine, the print issue. It's celebrating, it's the 10th edition, right?
Yeah.
Which is all about design natives. Tell us about the importance of the print title for the Aficionados. It's a really beautiful magazine. And as I said, I did find, a copy there at the Park Hotel Mondschein. So that's where I actually found out, about you guys. So that's, tell us a bit more about the magazine.
As the collection grew, I realised that I didn't want to have a directory of our hotels. And I think that's quite boring if you pick one up with a little picture and a lot of text and you think, well, okay, I don't really get the feeling of it. And because of our places are very layered and textured in design, they need more space to speak, like the Ottoman Good, which you've been to. Yeah. You couldn't summarise that in one image. It needs several. And so I thought, firstly, each property deserves a bit more space. Secondly, on the writing side as well, it needs to be focused a little bit more about what was the reason they were there? Why did they open this place? Why did they create it? What is the thread of design? What was their thought process? Again, you need space. I also quite like a bit of space, white paper between the sections. So I thought, okay, we're going to put a hybrid, I guess, between an interior design magazine of nice, beautiful homes, but ours will be nice, beautiful hotels and guest houses. And I quite like, I'm a bit of a wordsmith, so I like to play with wording and bring little clusters together because I think it makes it really interesting. And then, how do you take a 8-bedroom guest house and put it with the Greenwich in New York? Quite a complex process visually as well. So you need to find a thread. And this one, the latest edition, is called Design Natives. And really I was looking there at what was the point of ignition of the idea of the imagination. So the Greenwich was owned by Robert De Niro, and actually it's the only hotel that he really lives and works in as such. He wanted the red brick of New York. And it's very hard to get. So we had to go and find out and do a lot of research. And that sort of gave me a spark in the head. And I was talking to the guys at the Brecken in Adelboden, Switzerland, which is a rather new concept of chalet hotel. And again, they went with almost a crazy paving, a slate stone flooring throughout, a little bit retro, nod to the 70s, but then mixed with this chameleon of a chalet on the outside. And I like that extension from the exterior into the interiors of saying, okay, this was the starting point. And from here, we're going to move on. So this new edition, this 10th one, it's almost disappearing as it comes out. We find that the magazines, they're like, one hotelier wrote to me recently, said it's like hot bread from the oven. Yeah. As soon as we put them out, they're gone.
How often does it come out?
Twice a year at the moment. So each one is a print run of 22,000. We sell them online as well. You can pick one up in the hotels free, of course. Also in the Monocle shops.
Yes.
One of our favorite ones is in Murano.
Shout out to Linda.
Yeah, Linda is
if you're
fabulous. Yeah. And she said, people just pick them up and want to buy them. They're a special paper as well. It's quite light, which for me, as a frequent traveller, that's quite important to have something that's light to take with you. It doesn't really crease the paper, has a nice feel to it. A lot of people say, why do you print? Well, we're talking here at Monocle. But I think for me, if you want to know what the brand is about, you either stay in one of our properties or you pick up one of the magazines. Okay, we've got the digital side, the website, which drives a lot of traffic, but it's not the same language. And I also think if you want to talk about design and you want to talk about integrity, you need that visual experience. So I'm a complete fan. I would like to do 3 or 4 copies a year, but we're a very small team, so it takes quite a time for us.
Especially because it's the place that you would stay, which I think is the most important part of the trip. So, there is a lot of research involved, and you really want to be in a place that connects with you somehow, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the cover of this, the chair on the cover, that's a place in Alentejo in Portugal. And for me, it just signified their passion for architecture, but also the respect of icons behind the scenes, referencing their land, referencing their third generation family. And it's that thread it's a quiet thread that just brings everything together.
Where are you going next, actually? A personal question here, Iain. Where?
Oh, travel-wise?
Travel-wise.
This weekend I'm hitting Rotterdam, and then I'm training up to Antwerp, and then I'm going on to Berlin, swing past Munich, and back to London, and then I'm going to Spain, and then I'm going back to Portugal. Portugal is a really hot place at the moment. Yes. I just love it. And beyond,
big market here for Monaco as well.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's got the Lisbon vibe, but I think my favourite is sort of the other side of the Algarve at the moment. Not necessarily going towards the classic part of it, but along the coast heading towards Spain. Beautiful beaches, beautiful houses, beautiful people, beautiful food, and quite a simple take on life. But Portugal is probably my hottest place at the moment in terms of development, in terms of experience and travel. I go there a lot. I love it.
Thank you very much, Iain. And the new issue of The Aficionados is out now. For more information on that, go to theaficionados.com. And we head to Indonesia now. Monocle's Chiefs Conference in Jakarta last week included among its star guests Najwa Shihab, news anchor and founder of the Narasi News Network. Najwa Shihab joined Monocle's own founder and editorial director Tyler Brûlé on stage to discuss the founding principles of her media company and how the media landscape has changed since the company began.
I was a broadcast journalist since 2000s. So I've been in this industry for 25 years. But in my 17 years, me and my colleagues, we founded Narasi. So it was 8 years ago. Narasi is not just a newsroom. In Narasi, we also try to cultivate civic engagement. We see ourselves not just a media, but quote-unquote a movement. From the very start of Narasi, we've created a space where the young people can express their opinion, to ask questions, to be involved. And that's why in Narasi we have a specific department that cultivates community development. And right now, our registered members for community is almost 300,000 young Indonesians all over the country, even some of them are abroad. We have like a 3C mantra for Narasi. It's for content, collaborations, and community, because we believe you cannot rely on content, especially these days. You cannot sell contents. It's very hard to sell contents. But within the community, we can make people feel that they belong in the stories, that they feel trusted. And I think that's the number one most currency these days in this world, trust. And that's what we're trying to do by building community.
So you're 8 years into this, but if we just go back a little bit, and one thing we were talking about last night was, you talk about being a broadcast journalist, moving into it. Just tell us a little bit what's happened in the broadcast news scene. I mean, of course, it's not just Indonesia, we can talk about an erosion of trust in outlets all over the world. But
which is actually interesting because the Ipsos Trustworthy Global Index shows that Indonesian trust in journalists is the highest in the world, which is also something that we can discuss, but please go on.
So I'm curious, how have you seen, let's say, the evolution and maybe the current state of broadcast and that notion that you decided to go and do your own thing? What was not being delivered across cable, across satellite dishes, across the Indonesian archipelago? What was missing?
I think there's this really interesting studies. The key difference between traditional media and the new media is that traditional media don't see engagement as their responsibility. As for the new media, especially the digital platform, we thrive on engagement. So it's very important for us, the digital platforms, to have that connections with the people. We see that as part of our responsibility. For example, I did the same story when I was a broadcaster in Metro TV and now in Narasi. The story is about two young boys who was wrongfully convicted. They were tortured, wrongfully convicted for murder. They spent a few years in prison. And then when they got out, they asked for compensation from the state and it was denied. When I was doing the story in Metro TV, they were still in the process of the judicial system. So I did the usual thing. I interviewed their lawyers, I interviewed their family, I interviewed the police, and that's it, it stops there. But when we revisit the story in Narasi...
And what was the time span in between Metro and then doing it on Narasi?
I think it was probably 5 years, 4 to 5 years. And when we did the stories again in Narasi, this is after they sued for the compensation and it was denied. We didn't just stop at airing their stories. We then collaborated with the legal aid and then with the crowdfunding. And overnight, we managed to collect donations that would cover their entire school requirements, even if they want to continue as a lawyer. So that shows the different side. That's something I would never do as a broadcaster on TV. My job is done when they're airing. And another example, like during the pandemic, in Narasi, we created this hashtag di rumah aja, stay at home. So other than reporting on the vital informations on pandemic, we host an online concert collecting donations. And I think it got collected almost 14 million rupiah, which is almost $1 billion in over 3 days. For another example, the difference. When we're reporting stories on TV, we would just say, go vote. But in Narasi, go vote, and please sit down at your ballot box, make sure that your votes are counted, and then share that experience to us. So I think the most main difference are that connection, that engagement, that space that we're giving to our audience to make them feel that they can actually do something while they're not just enjoying a content, but they're making action.
And now we go back to the world of travel to speak with Condé Nast Traveler's executive editor, Erin Florio, who joined me to talk about their new issue featuring their annual hot list, looking at the best hotels, restaurants around the world. To discuss the hot list and more, here is Erin.
For us, I think the hot list is so important. One, because people really look forward to it. There's so much anticipation about it. And not just from, the hotel industry itself, but also just our audience. They want to know where we've been all year, what we're excited about. And I think what the hot list does is, A, it allows us to demonstrate, we're out there, we're traveling, we're in all these places, we're scoping out all these things, we're bringing back the best and we're bringing it to you guys. But also it allows us to sort of put this list together that, of course, is factoring in things like design, service, those sort of cornerstones of hospitality. But it also lets us celebrate those new places that are kind of championing the important things of travel now. So, local community engagements, those properties and those cruise ships that are really, leading the way with ecotourism and sustainability. And then, of course, just basic things that everyone's traveling for these days. The hotels that are doing the best food and, bringing the locals together, connecting locals with travelers. So it kind of really is a reflection, A, of sort of our passion and our interests, but also gives you a really good barometer of what's happening in the industry right now.
And one thing is interesting, particularly this year, I love the variety of prices. Of course, you have those amazing hotels, which, there's a reason why they're expensive. But I think budget-wise, I think there's something for everyone. And maybe that's something that maybe people will think, oh, Condé Nast Traveler, of course, they're looking at the more luxurious, the expensive. But that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, I say it all the time, luxury does not mean it's unaffordable. I think conventionally back in the day, that used to be the case, but, we really try and assess things that kind of live outside budgets. I'm not trying to sound ignorant. Of course, a lot of the properties that we're going to feature on this list, they're at a fairly high price point, but not all of them. So you've got some amazing, amazing hotels that you can get for, under $200 a night in places like Vienna. It's the Hoxton Hotel, actually, which is an amazing brand. It's super fun. I mean, it's like the type of place that everyone drops into. Like the locals go to the bars there, and you can stay there for like $150 a night, which is pretty great. The W Legacy brand that's reopened in Prague, and it's sort of part of its new rebranding of, this brand that I think millennials will remember from the early aughts, going and like dancing in the lobby bar. It's really grown up. It's really sophisticated now. They've opened a new property in Prague. You can stay there for about $200 a night. So yeah, definitely doesn't mean unaffordable just because you're on the hot list. We really make an effort to sort of champion that as well.
No, and it's being noticed for sure. What about in terms of countries and regions? I mean, you just came back from Asia, right? So I have to talk about Japan because, it's a country that is booming tourism-wise, and there are some Japanese hotels featured in the hot list. So tell us a bit more, perhaps some of the regions and countries in specific that are really doing well when it comes to new hotels and tourism.
Well, if you look on the map, if you were to look on a map and see like all of the properties of hot list plotted, it would feel like a very healthy geographic spread. And I think that indicates that travel is really booming everywhere, not just in these places that you expect. And of course, the places you do expect, it's rising and rising and rising. Italy's always going to be perennially popular. Japan is, I think we should definitely get back to the topic of Japan. It's just booming right now. Everyone is going. But you're also seeing new openings in unexpected places like sort of quiet corners of India, where properties like the Oberoi are able to create this incredible travel experience around seeing the tigers and having a real Indian safari experience, the type of experience you might normally associate with parts of Africa, Kenya, Tanzania. And, for their part, we have some amazing properties in Kenya. There's one of my favorite places is this opening called Toto, which is basically these amazing, like, I can only describe it as like luxury tree houses, right? Like we've had the luxury tented camps trend happen, and now we're moving into the luxury treehouse era. And I think that's really exciting. And my colleague actually in our Middle East office, Selena, she went and she stayed, and she just said, and she's a real safari expert, and she just said it was such an incredible experience because it was in this really quiet part of the Masai Mara. You're elevated, so you can see and hear everything from essentially your luxury treehouse, which is a pretty incredible experience.
That's amazing. And looking back to Japan, what did you notice? What is the reason that is booming so much? I think it's a country, I think they treat tourists so well. And, there's been quite a lot of backlash in some places against tourists. There's kind of this weird feeling going on, but I don't think that's the case in Japan.
Well, we had 3 Japanese properties on our hot list this year. And honestly, we could have had more. I won't get into the details, but the creation itself of the list is like, it's like a sport in our office. Like we spend so much time. Anyway, so we had so many options for Japan. We narrowed it down to 3. And I think there are 3 really good options because sort of going back to what you're saying about its popularity, it really reflects the different reasons and different regions why people are going to Japan. So we have a new beautiful wellness resort that's in the middle of Tokyo. We have the Six Senses in Kyoto, sort of this oasis of quiet and calm. But also, the Six Senses is a fairly well-known global brand. It really shows that the global presence is increasing in Japan. And then we had this really beautiful, really, really small property that's like 3 hours in the countryside outside of Kyoto. So it really shows this sort of multifaceted approach to Japan, which is sort of city, it's wellness, it's country, it's calm, it's kind of chaos and all of those wonderful things. And I think, the reason why Japan is growing and growing and growing in popularity is, as you said, absolutely. the hospitality is so high. You feel so welcome. I just got back from Japan on Monday night, and I mean, it was such an incredible experience. I was only there for a week, and I moved around the country a little bit, but you really do get this really strong sense of hospitality and graciousness for people coming into the country. But also, I think Japan is just rising and rising because it has every single entry point. People, you want to go there for the food, and the food it's really preserved that really authentic Japanese, food. It doesn't feel like it's been overly globalized, which you can feel sometimes when you go to other countries. The design aspect, I mean, it's just, there's so much like ownership of the way in which the Japanese approach their aesthetic. It's so unique. The nature is beautiful. It's calming. It feels good to be in Japan. I mean, I was sitting like in the middle of Osaka, which is, I don't know if you've been to Osaka on your trips to Japan. It is a crazy city. Like there is so much going on and it's so overstimulating. And yet, even in this overstimulation, which can be quite exciting, you still sort of feel this sense of being quite grounded and really anchored to where you are. And I think that feeling doesn't exist in every big chaotic city that you go to. So yeah, it's a really, really fantastic place. And I think we're just going to see it continue to rise in popularity.
You've described it perfectly, Japan. And you mentioned that, there's been some kind of arguments there in the office to see which hotels will make the list. I mean, It's quite a, as I said, a curated list. What about the cover? How do you select a cover for Condé Nast Traveler? With other titles like Vogue, it's straightforward, but I think Condé Nast Traveler must be quite hard, actually. Which hotel are we putting on the cover?
So, actually, that was also sort of a bit of a competitive sport, not just for the hot list cover, for every cover, but the hot list cover is really, really special because, of course, it's pretty much always something from our hot list. This year, it is the most beautiful Marriott resort in the Red Sea in Saudi Arabia. It's stunning. It's over the water. It has this like look of just sort of almost seashells rising from the water in the Red Sea in Saudi Arabia. And that is the hotel. And the idea is to pick something that is obviously going to be visually impactful, but also something that's really reflective of what we're trying to do with that list, which is create these sort of like, oh my gosh, I need to get there now moments and really sell it. And I think this cover absolutely does.
And it's surprising for some. I mean, sometimes you look as, okay, this might be in the Pacific or in the ocean, but then you look, okay, Saudi Arabia, very interesting, And I like that element of surprise, especially with this cover in particular. And one thing, sorry for making things a little bit political now, but we've been hearing a lot about, Trump tariffs, and in a way, people are saying that will impact tourism in the US. How do you feel as well? Because, of course, when you read Condé Nast Traveler, there are a lot of pieces on amazing places to visit in the US. But how, as an editor, how are you feeling that? And how can you help out and say, well, the US is still a great place to visit, actually?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, listen, at Condé Nast Traveler, our whole message around travel, and we really believe in this, is it's positivity around travel in every way, shape, and form. And we can't help, there are always global events that can kind of make travel can become sort of a casualty, unexpected casualty of events in the world. It can be political, it can be natural disasters, whatever it might be. And our intention is always to sort of demonstrate how we as a brand and our audience as travelers can kind of contribute to the positive change and helping to, bring back travel in places where it might have, been impacted. Of course, only when it's safe to do so, et cetera, et cetera. But as far as the US is concerned, listen, it's not about getting political. I mean, you look at the numbers, travel to the US is down right now. It's significantly down by some of our best traveled countries. Canada, I think, has dropped by double digits, February and March. The UK and Germany has dropped. And that's really, it's upsetting. But again, I think what we try to do, I know what we try to do at Traveler is really promote positivity. And I would really encourage, one, our audience, our American audience, just remember to be very good ambassadors for your country when you are traveling to other countries. But I would also, want to remind our own domestic travelers that there's amazing travel opportunities in the US. And I'm guilty of this. I live in New York City and I'm always looking outward, right? And sometimes I forget how incredible it can be to travel in the US and get to know your own country and get to love your own country. And if there are places in our country right now that are, really feeling the impact from a travel point of view, maybe, consider them, consider those places to go on your list. And I'm telling you, if you follow our hot list recommendations, we have a lot of places in the United States that have made the list this year, and I guarantee you won't be disappointed. But the idea, I think, is, support and be positive, and travel is always sort of a force for good, and I think understanding.
There's a lovely story as well on Idaho, I think, right? In the latest issue. It's a beautiful one, actually.
Oh, I've not been to Idaho, but, again, it's a place in the United States, gorgeous, romantic. There's so many places in this country to go and travel to.
And finally, I just would like to ask, how do you feel, Condé Nast Traveler is doing as well? Because I think print, especially for a magazine like yours, is so important as well. Because honestly, sometimes you can take Condé Nast Traveler doing your travels, And so tell us a bit more. What are the plans? Are you optimistic with the brand?
So optimistic. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, and I don't say this because of the position I'm in. I've never met a person that just doesn't love to travel, who travels. I mean, have you? I mean, I've met people that don't like pizza or French fries, which I think is crazy. But people who travel love to travel, and it's something they do more and more and more. And I think the future of travel is so bright. And what we do at Traveler is, I think we've created this really, really smart ecosystem of platforms. You mentioned print. Print gets a lot of, no pun intended, but it gets a lot of press for, being sort of this declining platform. Not the case, I don't think, with travel. It kind of becomes a thing that's separate from what it used to be. We've created this really, really amazing ecosystem of print, amazing video, social, digital products that appeal to so many different types of travelers and so many different audiences, talking about different types of stories, things at different price points, different parts of the world. So I think what we've done with this sort of ecosystem is create like a huge global conversation that just keeps going and growing around travel. And so much of what we try to do too is we want you to read these beautiful long form pieces and we want you to feel inspired, but we want to give you the tools to go ahead and then travel yourself, right? Like that's kind of what we're trying to get at, from regardless of what platform you're looking at. So what we're doing is we're really teaching people how to do it, why to do it, when to do it, and where to do it.
Thank you very much, Erin. Condé Nast Traveler May-June issue is out now, featuring, of course, their annual hot list. And now let's talk about cats. When I saw the cover of Catnip, I was intrigued. Here was a beautiful magazine aimed at cat people. There are not many cat magazines around compared to dog ones, for example. The cover is striking, and it is published by Broccoli Publishing, described as a publisher of unusual delights. Among their topics for books and magazines are cats, mushrooms, snails, and flowers. It was a pleasure to speak with Anja Charbonneau, founder and creative director for the publisher and editor-in-chief of Catnip, the beautiful 216-page, which is all about cats and cat culture.
It is officially 8 years this April since Broccoli first began. We started thinking about it and took a few months to kind of develop the first issue, and it launched in November 2017. And that was back when we only had one magazine, Broccoli.
That's amazing. And now, Broccoli, the magazine, it's already, correct me if I'm wrong, issue 20, right? That's fantastic.
That's right. Issue 20 is a big number, and it's actually the last issue of Broccoli magazine. So we stopped publishing Broccoli in fall 2024. So issue 20 is the final one. But Broccoli, the publisher, continues on. We're doing a whole bunch of other projects. I think after working on one title for 8 years, it just kind of felt like a great moment to wrap it up. Big, round, even number. 20 is a lot. And I think it captures a moment in time for cannabis culture and how it developed over that period of time. It's like really, we always talk about the magazines being like time capsules. And I think that if someone goes back to look at those issues years from now, it'll show so much about what was developing in that space during that chunk of time.
But it's fantastic. So even if you are a fan of the publication, you should calm down, because there's many other magazines and other books amazing, which is, the same kind of design and ethos in a way, if I may say, right?
That's correct. So it's the same editorial team working on all of our projects, which is really lucky. We've been together for so long, and we have the same editors, same designer, two different designers who work across all our projects. Even though the subject matter and the themes change, there is this like invisible string connecting all of them through the design, the aesthetics, even when they're sort of presenting different ideas, it's very underlying. But I think it's why people who enjoy our books and magazines, like they know, even if it's a disparate subject from what they first found us, or, you know, how they first found us, they know that if they liked that, they'll probably like this too. Yeah, we have a very eclectic library of titles coming so far.
I love that. And you are based in Portland. Is the rest of your team Portland as well? Or you're fairly kind of spread, you know, across the country or the globe?
We are all totally remote. So I'm the only one in Portland. One of my editors used to live here, but right after we met and it decided to start working together, she moved to Mexico City. So we immediately split. Our other editors in Cleveland, designers are in Austin, partnerships directors in LA. Like it's all spread. Oh, and our editorial assistants in Chicago. So we don't get to see each other a lot, but when we do, it's really special. And we've really mastered the art of the remote project management.
It's always, you know, we can always manage that. And also, I have to ask, Catnip. First of all, the first issue is brilliant. What a special cover. And I'm very happy to say I think it's the first cat magazine we're featuring here on the stack. The dogs had many magazines for that. I think it was about time for the cats to be there as well, right?
I love that. That's so great.
So tell us a bit more about the idea for Catnip. Are you a cat person? Do you have a cat? So tell us, where did the idea came from?
I do. One of my cats is right here next to me.
Aww.
The other one, because we moved to a new house yesterday, is hiding under the couch. So she might not make an appearance. But yeah, I really love cats. And some of our magazine ideas do come from just really silly throwaway comments. Like, why don't we just make a cat magazine? Because if it's something that we care about, I mean, really, I'm like the hardcore cat person of our editorial team. Our other two editors do have dogs, but they got on board. I think you can make a great magazine about anything if you're creative and clever and have a wide editorial scope. But for me, yes, I absolutely love cats. I think they're so funny and weird. And the human-cat connection is something that's so old. We're working on our second issue, actually, and a lot of the editorial pitches, so many people wanted to write about ancient Egypt and cats. And it's like, it really does go back really, really far. So, you know, it's just such a big connection that people have with the animals in their lives, whether they're cats or dogs or fish or whoever. But they're just so playful and strange. And it felt like a really rich editorial landscape. And we were able to make something that's like very joyful and playful and silly and fun, while also going deeper than you might expect than the kind of basic, I would say more like service journalism that you might find based around pets that exists online. I think that's what's always so special about working in print is you can surprise people. You don't have to write something that people land on after searching, like a Google search of my pet is doing something weird. What do I do? You know, we're not telling people how to live with their cats or how to care for their cats. We're just talking about the relationships and all the nuances and strange, fun things about these animals.
I wonder if you could give a taste for our listeners who haven't come across the first issue of Catnip of what type of stories. For example, I wonder if you could mention two, perhaps.
So I think on the more strange side, we have a writer, Lauren Oster, who often writes for our publications. And she has a great knack for merging science and sort of science that connects to your life in a really like accessible way. And she wrote about robotic companion cats and how they're being developed and how these engineers are trying to infuse what makes a cat into a robot. And they're like, you know, companions for people who just like, there's all kinds of reasons why someone might want one of these animals, but they're meant to move and react in a way similar to a real animal, which of course is a huge challenge because they're wild cards. I'm sure if you've watched anyone's cat or dog or pet, they do strange things. So I think maybe meant to be more comforting. But she wrote a really excellent article about how to create these qualities artificially and like how that science is developing. So that was kind of cool. And then there's stuff that's just very human and relational. So we have a wonderful piece about an apartment complex in London, and I believe it's the photographer who lives there. She brought a writer on, and they interviewed, I think, 6 different people who have cats, and the cats really rule the roost there. They're roaming around. The cats all know each other. The neighbors all know each other. And so it's just a really lovely profile series of the people who live with these cats in this kind of specific environment of a really urban apartment complex.
I want to ask you about the design because I think the cover is absolutely beautiful. There is kind of a retro touch to it as well, like almost, I don't know, I might be wrong, but something that came out in the 70s, perhaps. It's beautiful. Tell us about the design inspiration for the cover and for the magazine itself.
You're spot on with the retro inspiration. I wanted the design throughout the magazine to feel like, if you're in like an antique mall or a thrift store and you're looking at the knickknacks and the little trinkets, and you'll see cats all over the place. It doesn't matter where you are. There will always be cats on those shelves. And some of them are handmade and they look a little wrong. Some of them are, beautiful porcelain. And they're all just a little different and have this different characteristic. So I wanted it to feel like wandering the aisles of a thrift store. You don't know what you'll see next. Everything has this kind of kitschy retro touch. Some of it's very beautiful. Some of it's a little like off kilter. So it kind of ranges from, maybe like 60s to the 90s. There's some pixelation and little digital cats in there as well that touch on like the kind of early 90s Tamagotchi sort of spirit. And the colors are very warm, inviting. The cover art is a collage by Stephen Eichhorn. He's a Chicago-based collage artist who we've worked with a few times before for Broccoli. And he has this amazing series of art called Cats and Plants, where he collages old magazines using cats and plants, just that. And they're just so specific. They always have such character to them. And the Catnip cover is a close-up image of a big orange cat who looks maybe a little bit shy, but still wants to be the center of attention. And there's a small white daisy or a little white flower right on its nose collaged on. I love the image so much. And the most special thing that came kind of as one of those last-minute sparks of inspiration, there are clear spot gloss cat paw prints across the cover of the magazine and then also in some of the interior pages. So when it catches the light just right, you might think like, oh, there's something spilled on the magazine or what is this on the cover? But if you look twice, you'll see it's a cat paw print. And if you have a cat, they absolutely love to stand on things that they're not supposed to stand on. So people have sent me images of their cats standing on catnip, like perfect, just like the paw prints show. And it's just like an ode to cat behavior and cat misbehavior. And people really love those paw prints.
If I had a cat, I would do exactly the same thing. One question about, the business of Broccoli Publishing as well. I know people can actually go and buy the products on your website, but do you also sell in a few bookstores or a few select retail around the world? How does that part of the business work?
Yeah, we sell all over the place. Most of it is self-distributed. So we work directly with stores on wholesale, and a lot of them are in America, but we have a pretty strong connection in Europe and the UK as well. So we work with a distributor over there who helps with the magazines. Some people still buy from us directly, but there's so many more newsstands and magazine shops in Europe and the UK that we just don't have in the US. I think there's a few that are starting to pop up, and we're really excited when we see a new stockist come online that focuses exclusively on magazines. We're like, yes, we need more of this.
We do.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the places who carry our magazines in America are like gift stores who sell beautiful things for your home. And it's so awesome to see, a magazine being displayed alongside like a beautiful candle or ceramic or a woven textile. These objects that people put so much care into and like really enjoy displaying in their homes. Like, it's nice to see that people are being reminded that magazines exist, for one, and that they are being treated like not only something interesting and editorial, but also like the beauty of them is being celebrated.
I wonder if you could give us a preview of some of your other recent publications, could be magazines or books as well. I'm very curious about the oracles that you make, the crystal oracle. I think there'll be an interesting read as well. But I wonder, tell us a bit more, because you also have a magazine about mushrooms.
Yes, totally. So our other magazines that are currently out, there's one called Mushroom People, which is all about the world of fungi. And it's a much more like darker and mysterious title than Catnip. Definitely feels like a stroll through a spooky forest with beautiful things. And some of our art books, we have a very, very popular one called Snail World, and it's by the artists Leo Murawski and Sam Copeland. And they make miniature dioramas that are little scenes that are like from the human world, but then they put their pet snails in them and photograph the scenes. So it's like a snail's world. It's called Snail World, and it's all about the life of a snail. Those are very, very silly and weird. They also make really excellent video work on Aaliyah's Instagram. So those are fun to see the snails in their very slow action. We just released a book by the artist Female Pentimento in the fall, which are really like, ethereal and unsettling images of nature that are the artist's kind of grasp on how they exist in nature and sort of the way the inner world of nature and the outer world kind of intersect through this fantasy. They're very, very interesting. When we were doing test prints, the printer was like, are these real? And, they're digital collages, but they're so surreal and so spooky. It's like, they're very special. But the Oracle decks you mentioned, yeah, we started making those after Mushroom People came out because the mushroom world has so many interesting facets that connect very on a deep level to the human world, like just the idea of connection. I think if you get down to it, the mycelial network people find very inspiring as a way to kind of imagine how they connect to their environment and the people and the things around them and how you can kind of all support each other. So we thought those ideas were really beautiful and would lend themselves well to something introspective like an Oracle deck. So it's not as structured as something like tarot, where every card has specific meaning already, that every tarot deck in the world will draw on those points. For an Oracle deck, you as the writer and the editorial team can make up anything you want. So you really get to build your own universes. And we've been finding that with every deck, we're building a map of an environment. So we have the mushrooms, which are the forest, a flower oracle, it's the meadow and the fields, a seashell oracle, it's just the ocean, the crystal oracle, which to me is the underground or the mountains. And then to get a little crazy, we have a fairy tale oracle coming out soon. So that's a little more mystical, bringing the surreal into the real. And what else do we have? We are working on a music magazine, Music and Sound, called Heartbeat, which will be out in the fall.
I would love to find out a bit more about this one.
Yeah.
Very curious.
Yes.
So it should be out later this year then?
Yes, I think September is the realistic date. We've been taking our sweet time making this one.
You might have to come back on the stack, Anja.
Great. Yeah, no, it's been a really beautiful exploration because, I think when you look at music publishing, there are a lot of music magazines out there. Many of them are very focused on a specific genre or a specific listener of a kind of music. And they're kind of rigid in some ways. And I think that for most people who listen to music, which is almost everyone in the world, you don't listen to just one type of music. It's quite explorative and expansive. And you're not only listening to music, you're listening to the bus go by outside, you're listening to birds, and your body is interacting in this really fascinating way with all of this input. So we wanted to take that very broad approach. So not only speaking about music and artists and specific bands, but also talking about how does sound work? Where does sound come from? What are birds talking about? What are whales talking about? Bringing in nature, bringing in environment in a way that I haven't really seen other music titles cover. Our editor wrote a really beautiful sound diary from her apartment in Mexico City and explaining all of the sounds. And if you've been, it's so fun because there are these pre-recorded sounds that people who are collecting scrap metal or selling food, they all use the same sound, even though it's not their voice. It's this thing that is mutated and translated and expanded. It's really interesting. So I'm very, very excited for that to come out. And it also has a very dense design. There's a lot in there. Every story has a mini playlist that the author either added what they were listening to while they were writing the piece or expanding on what they're talking about in the piece, inspiration points. It also has a very kind of nostalgic tone to the design because we just love the warmth of that kind of approach.
Thank you, Anja. For more information on Catnip and their other titles, go to broccolimag.com. And that's it for this week's show. My thanks as ever to our editor, Jack Jewers. Any comments or queries, feel free to write to me, Fernando, at fb@monocle.com. We're back next Saturday at 10 a.m. London time. Meanwhile, you can always listen to previous episodes on monocle.com. We have a new website, by the way. Or go to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You've been listening to The Stack. I'm Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Until next time, it's goodbye from me.